The Village of Bartlett Board meeting for June 18, 2024. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Daney?
Here.
Gansey?
Here.
Gunstein?
Here.
Hopkins? Absent. Laporte?
Here.
Swansky? President Wallace.
Here. We've requested that Reverend Catherine Irwin of Emmanuel United Church of Christ do our invocation. Thank you for being here, Reverend.
It's always an honor and a privilege. Thank you all for being here. Let us be in an attitude of prayer together as you understand that. Gracious and loving God, Holy One known by many names and beyond all names, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of community, Spirit of justice. We ask your blessings on the people who have been given the privilege to lead this community in which we live and work and play. We give thanks for the members of the community here to listen, learn, and perhaps express their hopes and dreams for this village. As the agenda is discussed and the work and the issues and opportunities before us are addressed, help everyone to keep the needs of all of our residents in their thoughts. Help those gathered to craft policies for our village that will always endeavor to care for, to raise up all of the people who call this village home. In the name of the creating and redeeming God, so many of us and I know so well, through Jesus the Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This brings us to our consent agenda this evening. All items listed with an asterisk will be enacted in one motion. There'll be no separate discussion on items that are on the consent agenda. That being said, would any of the board member like to add or remove anything from the consent?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, I would like to add item E1 to the consent agenda.
Is there any discussion around the school resource officer that anyone would like to discuss in public?
Nope.
Okay, add that. Anything else?
Yes, and Mr. President, I'd like to add item number F3, the purchase of 3 Peterbilt dump trucks.
We finally got the dump trucks that we can actually buy. They're physical.
Yeah, finally.
It's been 4 years now, or?
They're Tonka trucks. They're just the
Yeah, just the toy ones.
Yeah.
So that's been a long going. If there's any discussion about that, it happened like 2 years ago. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to amend the consent agenda that will be including this evening on the committee minutes from May 21, 2024, the board minutes from June 4, 2024. The consent this evening will also include the bills list from June 18, 2024. The consent this evening will also include items D1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all the 4th of July information. Under License and Ordinance Committee, the consent will be adding item E1 under Police and Health Committee. The consent this evening will also include items F1, 2, and 3 under Public Works.
So moved.
second.
Moved by Trustee Daney, second by Trustee Laporte. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Laporte?
Yes.
Swansky?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
Gansey?
Yes.
Gunstein?
Yes.
Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Daney, second by Trustee Laporte. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Swansky?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
Gansey?
Yes.
Gunstein?
Yes.
Laporte?
Yes.
That motion carries. Next up is our treasurer's report. Mr. Treasurer?
Thank you. Included in your packet today is the Treasurer's Report for the month of April. This is a very preliminary April. Our final April statements will be released in October after our audit is completed. Also included is the sales tax report. We received $268,643. That represents activity for January, which was down $12,691 from the prior year. So for the last 12 months, we're down about $50,000, or just over 1%. For motor fuel tax, we received $147,000, up about $1,780. And for the year, we received just over $1,800,000 in motor fuel tax. And for LGDF, or income tax distributions, for the last 12 months, or for the fiscal year, we received $6,729,000 compared to $6,000,000 $1,641 last year, so it was up slightly. That would have been $10,514,000 if we were at the full 10%. So that's it for the treasurer's report, unless there's any questions. Thank you.
Nope. Anybody have questions for the treasurer? Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. We have nothing on the president's report. Does anybody have any questions for staff?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to thank Sam Hughes and Reagan Kohler and everyone else on staff and anyone who helped participate, along with Midwest Compost and ACE Hardware, for getting our garden off the ground. We had a great ribbon cutting. Stephanie and I were there. It was a lot of fun.
It was really
Got to know other gardeners, and they got to show off their gardens and what they were growing. It was,
Are all of them full? Are we,
I don't think so, no.
We're down to
3 plots?
But, so thank you very much.
Anything else? Hearing none, we'll move on to the town hall portion of the meeting this evening. Anyone would like to address the board, kindly step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Scott Bracken. I reside at 235 North Berteau. I have come to this meeting to speak out in opposition to the proposed noise ordinance, specifically the changes between the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. and the proposed severe financial fines. I live on a block that has almost all young families, and we all know each other and spend time together, with one exception. Some of my neighbors enjoy having people over on the weekends, which will go past 10 p.m. sometimes. I love to see my neighbors hanging out, having a good time. With the exception of my direct next-door neighbor, is one who always causes the problem on our block. He always calls the police on people. He's harassed our teachers that go to Independence for years before I even moved into this block. This unwell neighbor has called the police on me twice this year so far, and has called on my neighbors as well. According to the stats that you guys talked about last week and last meeting, during the day, comparing Bartlett Lakes and Deer Park and taking that out of the equation, it's 57 calls that the police get every year to our residential homes between the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Bartlett Lakes and Deer Park are failing their residents but not protecting them from excessive noise in their leases. If this is such an issue for them, it should be fixed by their management, not our police department. In a full year, 57 noise complaints from home residents during the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., in my opinion, doesn't justify making the proposed changes, imposing a hefty fine from $75 to $750. I now worry every day when my neighbor will call the police on me again and traumatize my children when the police show up. His living room is not his bedroom, is only 14 feet away from my backyard, from my porch. So the sound's going to carry much further, and it doesn't even have to carry that far. He has complained when my music is not very loud to myself, and I'm surprised he hasn't called the police on me for that. I should be able to go outside my home and be able to listen to my music without fear or worrying about a $75 or $750 fine when I choose not to abate because the music isn't very loud. The police talked about last week that they did some misleading testing while they were in a car. Most modern-day cars have very soundproofing abilities, so the sound's not going to carry like it's going to carry with a device, an amplified device outside. It will carry across the street and go to my neighbors when it isn't very loud. So residents will now have to apply for a permit when in their yards, in their garage, or on a driveway listening to an amplified device like this, because this will carry, look how small. And it's going to carry more than 150 feet. I went to try and submit an application today for a permit, but first I was met with creating an account. I created the account, went through the application, and it's $15 for me to play my device outside. And it has no mention of any limits to this permit. Can I get a permit every weekend to play this device outside? But I'm not going to pay $15 every time I want to go outside and work on my car in the garage or work in the yard. That's ridiculous. Sound carries far, and when you do a test with a car with the speakers that are inside a vehicle and pointed towards the inside, and with modern soundproofing, it's not related to the outside and is a false equivalent. The sound will definitely go past 150 feet. I have come to this board meeting before to express my concern about speeding in front of our elementary schools, and all I got was lip service and nothing was done about it. Still, to this day, I worry about my kids going to Bartlett Elementary and the kids that go to Independence next to me. This is much more serious of an issue burdening our residents than the restricted noise ordinance. We have seen time and time again in this country, in many neighboring communities, where the police can't be trusted with laws that they have to enforce, in which I have experienced myself. As a resident of Bartlett, I am deeply disappointed in Mr. Wallace in allowing the police just to police themselves. There should be checks and balances before a law is even passed. Last time I checked, this is a democratic village. And passing a law without it being put on a piece of paper is quite lazy. When my unwell neighbor runs his gas-powered lawn equipment every day, shaking my house, where is my noise ordinance? When my Christian white nationalist neighbor puts bigoted, hateful, narrow-minded, offensive signs on his lawn, where is my ordinance? When I can hear a truck 1 block away idling at 7 o'clock in the morning, where's my noise ordinance? When cars are putting our children at risk, where is the enforcement? Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you. Yep.
Walt Sykon, I'm on 232 Gingerbrook, 30-year resident, raised a family here, hope to retire here. My neighbor continually gives me reasons to leave, but the most recent one being he's established his house as an Airbnb. So Airbnb comes to Bartlett, and surprise, I go to ask what are the rules, and sadly, there are none. Of course, I understand nobody really is concerned about it unless it's right next door to you, across the street, or in your neighborhood. So think about that when there's a rental, you have new strangers coming into your neighborhood, large groups of sometimes all men, strangers staring at you and your spouse in your yard while you're doing yard work or enjoying your music. There's more noise, more traffic, car doors slamming at late hours, car alarms chirping, your young children playing in your front yard with strangers in the neighborhood. So you look at this listing, and it's somewhat laughable if it wasn't so serious, because he's getting a lot of action on it. Multiple rentals per week, in fact. I mean, here he says 10 guests maximum. I've seen much larger groups than that. He says 10 minutes from downtown Geneva and 35 minutes from the Chicago Loop, maybe by helicopter. I don't know. So the listing is bogus, but it's getting a lot of action. And it's a lot of fun for the whole neighborhood. You got cars blocking the sidewalk. You've got fire pits that are used close to the lot line, close to structures. You got garbage improperly placed and put out days early. It's, yeah, there's pictures. You guys can see them all. So what are other cities, towns saying about Airbnb? Well, Chicago has banned them due to them being party houses or hubs for prohibitive activities. Schiller Park said the high intensity of transient guests who have little, if any, connection to the nearby properties is not in harmony with the character of the neighborhood. Oak Park requires at least a rental license. Roselle, this one's the best. Short-term rentals have created problems for communities and governments facing an increase in unlicensed and unregulated individuals being able to rent out their properties, creating a potential for serious criminal activity, jeopardizing the health, safety, and welfare of the entire community. So you got guns, drugs, sexual predators, gangs are in news daily, but Bartlett has no rules for a potential base for this sort of activity. I know you can't control everything with a short-term rental, but at least there should be some rules, right? So I listed some starting point suggestions. Now let me make one thing clear. The rentals so far, the people renting have been more respectful to the neighborhood than the actual owner. So I'll put that out there. But permits should be required, as most things are, right? Or as they are for most things, I should say. There should be an annual fee and inspection yearly of the property to make sure the amenities are up to code. Are there any code violations? That seems simple enough. Liability insurance. How about the age requirements for the renting? Max occupancy with appropriate enforcement. Fee consistency. How about the owner informs the guest of parking policies? That could be a rule. No overnight street parking, no blocking the sidewalk or mailboxes. The owner to inform the village, the guests of the village garbage disposal and placement rules. Well, first, the owner has to understand what they are, because all the pictures you see are the owner's placement of that garbage in the street, past the curb, out days early. And then also ensuring the property meets local safety standards for fire alarms, extinguishers, carbon monoxide, pool safety features, stair railings. How about posting of fire pit safety rules, no large cardboard pieces, or proper distance from structures, property line? That's my biggest fear. This neighbor I've seen, he's been known to create fires with huge pieces of cardboard floating into my yard, still on a flame. I just need one to land on my roof. Or, you know, anyways, I put in a random thought about how you might be able to discourage it altogether, but it may not be legal. Now, just by coming here, and if my neighbor finds out, he's likely to retaliate, as he did when he was mad at me for reporting him on something, and he painted my fence black. You guys probably remember me being in there for that, right? The fence is not black yet, but I'm sure it may soon be, because you never changed your code. All you had to do was add a couple of lines to your current code, like one uniform color scheme inside and out. That's not hard. That doesn't infringe upon anybody's creativity, but make them look at their creativity like you have to look at their creativity on the inside and the out. Seems simple enough. Because here's a recent text from him saying, "And tread lightly, I still haven't painted the other side of my fence, and my favorite color black is still allowed by the village." And so retaliation is still allowed by the village. So guys, think about that. Thank you. Thank you.
We did discuss this at one point in a board meeting, and there was so few Airbnbs that were actually going on, but that was, what, 6 months ago?
No, it was longer than that. We agreed to bring it back.
August of last year.
Oh, so almost a year.
It was August of last year, and we had about 5 that we were able to find. They weren't all active, but they were ones that we were able to find at that point.
Let's bring it back to committee.
Okay.
We agreed to bring it back after a year, but we could bring it back early.
Thank you, Walt. Anyone else like to address the board at this time? John, does anyone online like to address the board?
We do not.
Thank you, John. We'll move on to standing committee reports. In lieu of each of you telling me that you are either on the consent or don't have anything to report, we will go past the standing committee reports to new business. Does anyone have any new business to discuss? Any questions for staff? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by trustee Daney, seconded by trustee Gansey. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Daney?
Yes.
Gansey?
Yes.
Gunstein?
Yes.
Laporte?
Yes.
Swansky?
Yes.
We are adjourned.